Welcome back to Game Talk from the Bench. I'm your host, Drew Barreto, and today I'm here. He's not a new guest. He's been on one of my previous episodes, but it's my brother, Sonny. My co-host, he couldn't make it today, so Sonny is here to fill in. Today, all we're talking about, MLB Trade Deadline, has been one of the craziest deadline in recent history. Obviously, there's been some big deadlines in the past, Soto getting traded to the Padres, but this year, major, major moves have been made. Starting off, um, you know, Padres always have a good farm system. People said, they traded a lot of the farm system last year when they acquired guys like Jason Adam, Luis Ariz, Tanner Scott. Um, but this morning, I wake up and Mason Miller and JP Sears are traded from the Athletics to the Padres for the number three prospect for MLB Pipeline's number three prospect, Leo Dallas, DeVries, Braden Nett, Henry Baez, and Eduardo Nunez. And to be completely honest, it does feel like an overpay by the Padres. They gave up their number one prospect, number three prospect in baseball. For obviously Mason Miller, who was an All Star last year and is one of the best closers in baseball. Obviously, he's 26. He's not a free agent until 2030. And then JP Sears is an Indian guy. 4.95 ERA. He's not the greatest, but Padres gave up a lot to get Mason Miller, and in return, the A's now have a very good young core. They'll have Nick Kurtz, Jacob Wilson, Zach Geloff, Tyler Soderstrom, Shea Langoliers, Lawrence Butler. A's can be good in the future if they could get their pitching staff together. But what was your reaction when you first saw this trade go down?
I saw that this morning when I woke up. I got in the notification as soon as I woke up, and I immediately was like, "Wow!" I was like, at the same time, I'm not surprised. Padres are known, at the deadline to always go all in, no matter what. They always seem to bounce back. They'll get rid of all their prospects, but then eventually they'll get them back. It's nothing new. It's still crazy that trades like this still happen, which it keeps the trade deadline exciting to watch out for. So it's always exciting to see Prowler up there doing what he does. Wish the Giants would take a little bit more note with that, but that in my opinion it's a pretty good trade for right now. It's a win now situation like they've always been doing. So we'll see. They have the best bullpen in the MLB in my personal opinion. So
They do, and we'll get into some more trades about teams upgrading their bullpen. But yeah, AJ Preller. Some people call him a sociopath. The way he just he wheels and deals. This guy could find all the talent in the world, and he'll trade him at the snap of a finger. This guy's just he's always constantly working. He's constantly moving. He's electric. When you see the MLB trade deadline, it's like no other. NFL trade deadline isn't as ecstatic as this. Every year MLB trade deadline has something amazing to offer. And you brought up the Giants, how the Giants, you wish they were more like Preller. Obviously they acquired Devers, right? They acquired Devers in June. They gave up Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks, and a couple prospects. Yeah. They got Devers. Obviously they've been the worst team in baseball since um the MLB All-Star break. But like you said, you brought up the Giants, and they have made a couple moves recently. Yesterday, we found out watching the Giants game. Tyler Rogers, the vet, he's been with the Giants for 7 years. He gets dealt to the Mets, and for which I honestly thought was a great deal for the Giants. They get Jose Butto, great. He's a good reliever arm. Obviously, his stats aren't the same as Rogers, and then they get two prospects in return. And I thought that was great for the Giants. And then right now, Camilo Doval traded to the Yankees. That was one of the big moves the Yankees made to bulk up their bullpen. We do not know what the turn on that is yet. And then I got another Jeff Passan. Says the Kansas City Royals acquired outfielder Mike Yastrzemski from the Giants. I don't know if you saw that yet, but the Giants making some moves. Obviously, they're 500 now. We were just at the game the other day. They were on a 6-game losing streak. They just got swept by both the Mets and the Pirates. As a Giants fan, how does it feel?
it's tough. We we have a very solid team. Offensively, we just need some guys to start getting a little bit more hot. We have Adamas who's been hitting lights out. We have Chapman who's been doing really good. Devers slowly getting to that where we need him to be. But the struggles is in our defense. Are bringing runners in, and then silly errors here and there. Like for example, Ramos having all those outfielding errors. It's a tough watch. It's always exciting to watch them because you never know what's going to happen. We can make a comeback. We've done it multiple times throughout this year. But it was just a little frustrating that we didn't do as much as we thought we were. Like we wanted, I know me and my buddy Daniel wanted to get Stephen Kwan, or another starting pitcher just to help. Like starting pitcher would have been more ideal in my personal preference than Stephen Kwan, just because we need that pitching power. We need people to last longer. We have too many. We have too many. We're using our relievers too much, and it's putting a strain on our bullpen. We had one of the best bullpens throughout before the All Star game, and now we're constantly using them up because our starters can't last that long. So it's been a tough watch. We're one game under 500, so I mean it's still possible. We could still get hot in August, September. So I mean it's not a lost cause just yet, but.
Yeah, like you said, they're only one game under 500. They're still within the playoff race, but like I just said, they traded bench piece Mike Yastrzemski, who was a starter, and then they traded Camilo Dovaldo, their closer, and so we have yet to see the return on those guys. But like you said, that bullpen that was once one of the better ones in baseball is now a little bit shorthanded. We don't, like I said, we don't know who's going to replace them. Obviously, they got a couple guys. Eric Miller is on the IL. Joey Lucchesi is, he's been great since, being on the team. But like you said, it's been rough. They had a couple all stars. Webb, Ray, and Rodriguez. Those three pitchers have been great. But since the break, I mean, like they've been the worst team in baseball. Like I said, they on a 6-game losing streak. I mean, that doesn't give, like Matt Chapman said, doesn't give Buster Posey, you know, the idea to like, okay, I should buy into this team after just losing 6 straight. Buster Posey's probably thinking in his head, do I have the team to win this year, or should I just focus on next year? And I think that's kind of what he had to do. He kind of had to sell a couple guys that he could get good value for, like Duvall probably will get good value from the Yankees. We're yet to see, but it will be tough. It's going to be, like you said, a lot of baseball left. We'll have to wait and see, but teams are bulking up, and the Giants just went out one of them. But one team that instead of bulking up, they just decided to sell their whole team. And no, it wasn't the White Sox, wasn't the A's, um, the Twins. The Twins went out and they sold the whole team besides one of their starting pitchers, and it's just unbelievable. Obviously the 12 games behind the Tigers in the AL Central, but they traded Carlos Correa back. Well, obviously, Correa signed in free agency, but they traded him back to the Astros. The Astros get Carlos Correa. In return, obviously, Isaac Paredes is probably out for the rest of the year. Um, Twins are paying, I believe it was $33 million of the $100 million left in his contract. Um, and we still don't know what the return is. I think it's just for cash. Well, not even just for cash. I don't even know what the return is for the Twins. It doesn't even say right here. It just says Carlos Correa is
Yeah.
being acquired by the Astros. And so Astros are another team, they struggled to start the year. Now they're one of the better teams in baseball. Um, they have 60-plus wins. They're 61, um, 62 and 47. And now they, like I said, Jeremy Pena is on the IL. So they get Carlos Correa to fill in for shortstop, and then he'll probably move over to third base. And they also acquired Jesus Sanchez in left field. Also, Jordan Alvarez has they said it was a unique hand injury. It wasn't like a normal top. It was like kind of like the bottom. And they will explain that on ESPN. But yeah, they get Jesus Sanchez to replace Jordan Alvarez for now. They get Correa to replace Jeremy Pena for the time being, and he'll eventually move to third for Isaac Paredes. But the only reason the Astros made these moves is because the Mariners made some big time moves. Obviously, we know Mariners acquired Josh Naylor last week, or it came out that news came out the day after our last episode was uploaded. Um, but the Mariners they reacquire third baseman Eugenio Suarez from the D-backs for infielder Tyler Locklear, Hunter Cranton, and right-handed pitcher Juan Burgos. Obviously, Suarez was a big name of this deadline. A lot of teams interested. Obviously, the Yankees were one of them, but the Yankees instead went to Ryan McMahon of the Colorado Rockies. And now what we might obviously Mariners are a couple games behind the Astros. They're 5 games behind. Um, but now we might have a clash between the Mariners and the Astros heading into September. I mean, that looks like. I mean, what do you think? Who do you think comes out on top of that American League West?
I honestly think the Mariners are gonna make a strong push, and they're not too far behind. They're pretty solid right in the middle. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are right there in the middle. It's still anybody's game. There's no one team that's super ahead of everybody right now. In which there's a handful of teams that should be, but due to injuries and stuff like that, it's held certain teams back. But I'd be excited to see the Mariners go far. Especially with the new additions that they've added. It's up to their pitching to to hold out as long as they can. I mean, they have the hitting, they have the power, they have the whole offensive scheme right there. But it's just up to their pitching, which most other teams. There's a handful of teams that are with that right now, but it's gonna be fun. 2 months I would say right now until the postseason starts.
Yeah, wild card races are close as of right now. Like you said, we got 2 more months of baseball. And it's all about getting into October. I think any team that makes it into October has a chance to win the World Series. Like you said, Mariners got the hitting. They just added Josh Naylor. They just added Suarez. They do have the pitching. Obviously, they had one of the best pitching staffs last year. Obviously, so far they've had a couple of injuries that starting the lineup. But Brian Wu, he's been great. I'm blanking on his name. Luis Castillo, he's been great. George Kirby, he's been coming back from injury. Obviously, they still have George Kirby, and I'm blanking on the next guy. Um, but yeah, the Mariners they definitely have it. It's just can they catch up to the Astros? The Astros, like I said, are 5 games ahead. Um they just added a couple of guys. Um, they also have Logan Gilbert. There you go. Obviously, the closer and Andres Munoz. I mean, Kyle Raleigh's probably might win the MVP now. Ever since Aaron Judge went down, so
Yep.
it's gonna be interesting to see who comes out of that AL West and who's in that wild card spot. But like you said, teams, trying to beef up their bullpens. Obviously, Padres had the best bullpen in baseball. They added to it, right? They didn't even trade Robert Suarez. They kept Suarez. They added Mason Miller. But a couple of teams added to their rosters. Obviously, like I said, Twins sold their whole team. Johan Duran, um, is going to the Phillies, for catcher Eduardo Tate and right-handed pitcher Mick Abel. This happened yesterday, and then Yankees. Obviously, Pirates. Have Paul Skeens. People. Some people believe that Paul Skeens could have been traded. Obviously, for some reason, the $88 million payroll that the Pirates had, they wanted to shed some, and they do. They traded David Bednar to the Yankees for catcher Rafael Flores, catcher Edgelin Perez, and outfielder Brian Sanchez. That happened earlier today. Obviously, Devin Williams hasn't been the guy that they, traded for last year. He struggled. Um, and so, these guys, because the Padres, there's been many games where the Padres bullpen before they added Mason Miller were, their starter goes 5 innings, and then they bring out what Mike Schill calls the four horsemen: Jeremiah Estrada, Adrian Morejon, Jason Adam, and the Robert Suarez. I mean, if the Padres had a lead after 5 innings, the game was basically over. They basically won the game, and now it's come to the fact that if the Padres have a lead after 4 innings, the game is now basically over. You add Mason Miller to that, and it's scary. Teams, bullpens are what we saw it last year with the Dodgers. Dodgers had a couple of bullpen games in the playoffs, and their bullpen was lights out. I mean, they had a full bullpen game against the Padres and the NLDS, and they ended up winning that game. And that bullpen was just shut down for the Dodgers, and they were probably the biggest reason for them winning the World Series. So now these teams are trying to replicate that. Like I said, Phillies getting Johan Duran, Yankees getting David Bednar. I mean, these guys want shut down bullpens. Where once they have the lead, the game is basically over. Um, I mean, like you said, Giants had one of the best bullpens. Now they trade a little. I mean, it's just crazy to see how valuable these bullpens are. I mean, we talked about Tyler Rogers, the kind of hole he got. I mean, like I said, Mason Miller, Giant. I mean, the Padres traded number 3 prospect in baseball for Mason Miller. Same with the Phillies. I mean, these relievers, especially these top relievers, they're worth so much, and teams are willing to pay for these guys. It's just astonishing to see. But moving on to another team that's sort of in the playoff hunt. They are third place in the AL West is the Rangers. They had the same record as the Mariners. They won the World Series in 23, right? They were terrible last year. They've been iffy this year. Um, but they go out and they acquire Merrill Kelly from the D-backs. Obviously, the D-backs were sellers, you know. Um, they kind of underperformed the Diamondbacks, and now they became sellers. They traded Merrill Kelly to the Rangers for left-hand pitcher Cole Drake, David Hageman, and Mitch Bratt. Couple prospects, and then the Rangers also. I forgot who else they acquired. It was Steven. I believe it was Steven Matz. That they acquired from the Cardinals. And just another team that's just trying to make it right.
Hmm.
They got the hitters. They have Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia, Marcus Semien, um, and a lot of teams just making the hunt. I mean, what do you think about these teams that aren't in the wild card but are trying to make it there? That are a couple games out.
Like I said before, it's still anybody's game. These additions that they add at the trade deadline are going to be huge, regardless of who they may be or how impactful they will be. Because a lot of these guys, they're trying to trade for, at least teams are trying to trade for positions that they need. Right now, a lot of teams needed more bullpen arms or better bullpen arms. And they're willing to give up prospects and other utility guys that are in the lineup. And that's like like Yankees. They got David Bednar. They got Duvall. That's huge. Phillies. Duran. These are all big pickups for them. Because those teams have the hitting. It's just up to their bullpen or their starters. Going the distance that they need them to. And in my personal opinion, I think pitching is a big deal when it comes to baseball and how well they can do. You can have an okay hitting team, but if your pitching is lights out, there's no stopping that. And a lot of these teams are trying to be powerhouses when it comes to pitching. And I mean, shoot, might as well go all out. And so it's cool to see like the Rangers, you get the Merrill Kelly and stuff like that. And then the Mets acquire Ryan Helsley, which is huge for the
Yeah,
Mets.
another flamethrower, like you said, powerhouse bullpens, and yeah, I was about to talk about that next, but yeah, Mets acquired Ryan Helsley for Jesus Baez, Nate Dome, Frank Ellis. These teams are willing to trade their prospects. It's reminding me of the Rams, back in 21, 22, when they went to go win the World Series. They traded like their picks for the next 3 years so they could get Matt Stafford, so they could get a couple of these big name guys, and they were ultimately able to make it to the Super Bowl, and they ended up winning. And so when I see all these teams trading prospects, that's what I get reminded of the Rams when they traded all their picks to go out, and they went all in for Super Bowl and they ended up getting it. But a couple um, other acquisitions. Blue Jays acquire Shane Bieber from the Guardians. Bieber obviously coming back from Tommy John. He hasn't pitched this year. He will probably pitch maybe in August. He'll definitely be back in September. Padres, Padres, like I said, they already made the big move this morning, acquiring Mason Miller and JP Sears. But they also acquire all-star Ryan O'Hearn and outfield Ramon Laureano from the Orioles. And they sent a haul of prospects. They sent about six or seven prospects in return to the Orioles. Obviously, Orioles are another team that are selling. They also traded Cedric Mullins to the Mets. Um, Orioles were one of the teams that they were a playoff team last year, and this year they just didn't have. They had some injuries. Adley Rutschman's been injured. A couple of their pitchers have been injured. They just didn't have the rotation. Obviously they lost Corbin Burns in the offseason, so it was tough for the Orioles, and they became sellers at this deadline. But Padres going all in. AJ Preller said, "I don't care who my prospects are. I'm willing to trade them if it means that I got a shot at the World Series this year." And obviously, the Padres have a 3-game lead and a wild card. They're 3 games behind the Dodgers of first place in the NL West. So Padres going all in for a World Series. Obviously, it would be their first if they can go and make it. But it's gonna be tough. The NL West is stacked. Phillies acquire Harrison Bader from the Twins. Like I said, the Mets already acquired Cedric Mullins. Um, Cubs also made some transactions. They acquired Michael Soroka, and they acquired Willie Castro from the Twins. Like I said, Twins sold everyone. We all know, like I talked about earlier, Jesus Sanchez went to the Astros. Padres also acquired catcher Freddie Fermin from the Royals. For Brian Berger and Stephen Kohler, which I thought was a little bit of an overpay. I thought Brian Berger was great for the Padres, but he's now going to Kansas City. Dodgers acquired right-handed pitcher Brock Stewart for James Outman. Um, some other, like I said, Rangers acquired Danny Coulomb from the Twins. Twins just, like I said, I'm pretty sure the only people left on the Twins is Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan's still part of the
I would say Byron
Joe
Buxton too.
Byron Buxton. There we go. But yeah, I mean, Joe Ryan was a big name, and at this trade deadline, obviously he was an All Star this year, and I'm surprised to see he's still on the team after they traded the whole team. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like you think they'd get a haul for him. I mean, what do you think? Why didn't they trade Joe Ryan? Right?
Yeah, that's one of the pitchers that I was hoping the Giants would get, to bolster their pitching staff too. I'm surprised, maybe something will come out in a little bit if we did make an offer at all. Um, yeah, it was kind of weird to not see them. I can understand, not getting rid of Buxton because he just got injured right now, so he's on the IL and stuff like that. But yeah, I was actually pretty surprised. He was one of the top guys up there. I mean, there was a handful of guys that didn't even get traded. You get like Stephen Kwan. You have uh, what's it called? Even Robert Suarez was up there on the trade
Robert
deadline.
Suarez, Dylan Cease was someone who might have gotten traded, but ended up didn't.
Yeah, and then you had like the Giants were willing to listen offers for Justin Verlander, even though he's up there in age, but he's still pitching pretty okay. I mean, there was a handful of guys that didn't even like budge or move, which I was surprised with. Jaron Duran, there was talks about Jaron Duran either going to the Padres, the Dodgers, or even the Giants, for example. Um, and then you have the Red Sox, that acquired Dustin May a little earlier today, I believe. I'm not sure what they got for him, but it was a pretty interesting deadline so far. It's anybody's ball game. So
It is. I mean, a lot has happened. Like I said, Twins they dealt Griffin Jack to the Rays, and in return they got Taj Bradley.
yeah,
Um, they continued. They also sent Luis Varlin and Ty France to the Blue Jays. Another trade I just saw was Shelby Miller to the Brewers. Um, and Jordan Montgomery is also in that trade as well. Obviously, Jordan Montgomery is on the 60-day IL. He signed, had the great year with the Rangers when they won the World Series. And then he signed with the Diamondbacks and hasn't been great. Like I said earlier, Yastrzemski to the Royals. The Vault to the Yankees. Charlie Charlie Morton is going to the Tigers. Tigers have made some, I believe, some questionable moves. They traded with Paul Sewell and Kyle Finnegan, two relievers who have really high 4 ERAs. For one being one of the better teams in the American League, um, I would think they would make some better moves to, give themselves a chance to win the World Series. But yeah, earlier I was wrong. Rangers acquired reliever Phil Maton from the Cardinals. Steven Matz is going to Boston. Another move Boston made is they acquired Dustin May for outfielder James Tibbs. They acquired James Tibbs from the Rafael Devers trade. Um, and now he's a Dodger. So hopefully the James Tibbs doesn't haunt the Giants in future years. But another former Giant, right? Taylor Rogers was on the team, traded last deadline, um, or was it the offseason? One of the two. He was traded. He was part of the Ke'Bryan Hayes trade that sent Ke'Bryan Hayes from the Pirates to the Reds. And now he's been traded from the Pirates to the Cubs. So Taylor Rogers now is part of the Cubs bullpen. Luis Robert, also one of the big names, who was supposed to be traded, was not traded. He's going to remain with the White Sox. Obviously, the White Sox trade Adrian Hauser to the Rays. We don't know what the turn is on that. Yankees get some shortstop help. They trade for Jose Caballero mid-game. They were in a game this morning. It was in a rain delay, and then it came back on, and Jose Caballero was traded from the Rays to the Yankees. He's tied first. Yeah, he's the MLB leader in stolen bases with 34. Um, so hopefully he helps the Yankees. Obviously, like I said, the Yankees are always a powerhouse. They still have the questions around Aaron Judge and his injury. Padres acquired Nestor Cortez. Um, he's on the 6-day IL. He's making rehab starts. Like I said, Dustin May to the Red Sox. The Cincinnati Reds trade for Miguel Andujar from the A's. Another big name that you didn't mention, but Sandy Alcantara. He was also a big name who was supposed to be moved. But he's not. He's gonna stay in Miami. The Marlins did not trade him. He's had two good back-to-back starts. Um, and so it's like I said, a lot of moves been made. I mean, I'm trying to cover every single one as you go. Bailey Falter was traded to the Royals. Um, like I said, Willie Castro to the Cubs. It's just so many so many moves that like I said, no other deadlines like this. And the NFL trade deadline is not like this. The NBA trade deadline is not like this. I mean, that's what makes baseball so fun and interesting. I mean, they have like I said in previous episodes, they have the best All Star game, and they have the best. Honestly, they have the best offseason and trade deadline. I mean, that's just how it goes. I mean, it's just so. I mean, because baseball, other sports don't have prospects, right? NBA, NFL, you have your roster, and then you kind of have like NFL has the practice squad, NBA has the G League, MLB has prospects, and prospects get traded all the time, and they go, and that's what makes baseball so entertaining. But it's just business. It's insane, right? I mean, there's no other words to put than insane.
Yeah, I mean it's all business, at the end of the day. But that's why, like you said, like you mentioned, prospects. It makes it so interesting because no other. I mean, you have the G League for the NBA. Yeah, you have the NFL has their side to this too. But prospects are like all over the place for MLB. Different divisions, double A, triple A, single A, all of that. And with the prospects, because there's been numerous prospects that have been traded, all the time, right? And they end up panning out when they go to a different team. They rise above, and it's crazy because when you trade them or get rid of them or you see their name when they get traded, you're like, oh, it's okay, it's a nobody. And then next thing you know, 2 years from now, they're in the All-Star game playing lights out. And it's always so fun seeing that because a lot of people, when they get the prospects, when they get traded, they get that second chance. That they needed that little ignition, that fuel to the fire. I'm gonna start playing better and stuff like that. And it's always fun seeing them, grow and just become a spotlight in the sport.
Yeah, like you said, prospects. Sometimes we don't know. Padres used to have Trey Turner, Max Fried, Manuel Clase. Um, there's a fourth one that I'm blanking on. But they had all these prospects. They were showing on TV, on ESPN all the prospects AJ Preller has traded. Um, and obviously these guys were they were part of the Padres farm system, but they got traded, and now they're stars. Class A, the star closer for the Guardians. Obviously he's suspended. Trey Turner is was one of the best shortstops in the game. Obviously he's taken a little bit of a dip. Max Fried's been all star for the Yankees. He's been fantastic. I mean, like another Padre, Fernando Tatis. He was part of a trade with the White Sox. Now he's one of the best right fielders in baseball. I mean, that's the great thing about baseball is you have all these prospects. You don't know how they're gonna turn out. Sometimes they don't pan out. Uh, so you're okay with trading them. But like I said, but that's what makes baseball so great is because you could trade these prospects for MLB guys now. You may end up winning, you may end up not, and those prospects may end up panning out. But that's just all part of the game, and it is so fun to see, and it's this deadline. I mean, there's gonna be so much shakeups. There's gonna be so many new players and new jerseys, new teams, and it's gonna be, like you said, wild to see for the next 2 months. But I feel like we got most of it covered from the MLB. Not much in the other two sports. I will talk about one extension in the NBA. Mikal Bridges signed a 4-year, $150 million extension with the Knicks. I mean, to me, that's just crazy. 4 years, 150 million. I mean, I get it. They were just in the semifinals. Obviously, he no, they weren't in the semifinals. They were in the conference finals.
Conference finals, yeah.
Um, but he underperformed bad. He was not playing great whatsoever, and to see them reward him with 150 million is just crazy. Especially when teams they start talking about the thing the first apron and the second apron. I mean, they already have a lot of money towards Jalen Brunson. They got a lot of money towards Karl Anthony Towns. They don't have much depth. Yeah, they signed a couple of guys in the offseason. They got Jordan Clarkson, but it's the big. I know he's young, but just after seeing him not, you know, mesh that well with the other guys, I just couldn't believe they, extended him. Obviously, they traded a lot for him, but I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Mikal Bridges fan. I always liked his game and everything. And I remember when I got the notification a little earlier, I was just all like, wow, that's a big overpay in my personal opinion. But then again, I can't just single him out. There's a lot of these guys that were still on rookie contracts, getting max contracts like 200 million, 5 years, 200 million, 240 million. It's all like a lot of these guys haven't really proved much. Yeah, they have 1, 2 good seasons, but it's it's tough to say whether they deserve this money or not. I mean, by all means, like we're no sports analysts or anything. We never
yeah,
made it far and stuff like that. So, but as a fan perspective, it kind of bugs me. That's like with Kaminga right now. With the whole deal going on. That's why the Warriors haven't signed Al Horford, or anybody else because they're waiting on the Kaminga if he's going to get traded, if we're going to resign him, or what's going to happen with him. It's kind of like a diva move, like like when NFL receivers try to get their money and they hold out, for example.
yeah,
So it's, I mean, it happens in all leagues, all across sports, but it's it's as a fan, it's kind of annoying, and it bugs me that they act a little immature, like they've earned so much to get paid. I mean, regardless, they're getting paid millions, to play a sport that they love and stuff like that. But some people just need to take some paychecks, or some pay cuts, sorry, and be grateful to be the role player that the team needs them to be. But it's not for everybody. I know some people want to be their star player, their own player, but then again, these are team sports. At the end of the day, they're
exactly.
not
That's how
one.
you people win championships. I always talk about when the Warriors got Durant, right? A couple of guys had to sacrifice. Clay and Draymond, contract wise, they sacrificed money so they could get Durant. Curry sacrificed, obviously, becoming more of a, um, a playmaker with Durant. Because obviously, Durant's a great scorer. You're not gonna stop. You're not gonna tell him to stop scoring. So it's just all about like sacrifice. Teamwork, like you said. Um, and so like you said, like Jonathan Kuminga. I've been done with his situation. I want him traded. I don't want him part of the Warriors anymore. I'm tired of him acting like he is the number one option on the team when Steph Curry is still on the team and you have Jimmy Butler. But and then you start talking about wide receivers and then being divas. I was gonna talk about a wide receiver um after. Well, I guess I'll talk about him now. But this guy isn't really a diva. But Terry McLaurin has just requested a trade from the Commanders. I talked about it in my last episode how he deserved to be paid. He's been with the team since 2019 when they drafted him. He's had no complaints, no problems. He's played with so many different quarterbacks. Now they have their franchise guy in Jaden Daniels, and all he wants is a contract extension. And they're just not willing. They're not budging, and it's weird because they have the new ownership now. Um, and they're not willing to pay him, and now he's willing to go elsewhere, and I think that's rough. Like I said, Jaden Daniels is gonna be a sophomore year next year. You want your number one wide receiver, um, and now you, like I said, see the news that says he's requesting a trade, and he's gonna. A lot of teams are gonna want to are gonna inquire about him because he's a great wide receiver. He's a 1,000 yard guy. I'm pretty sure the only season he didn't have 1,000 yards was his rookie year, but he still had like 900 plus. And so it's like you said, wide receivers. Some not even it's not even just wide receivers, but some players would just they'll hold out. But some are reasonable, right? Trey Hendrickson, he was holding out. I mean, he was one of the best edge rushers last year. He deserved to get paid, and the Bengals weren't paying him. Um, but mostly it is with wide receivers. They will sit out and they will get their contracts. It was Brandon Ayuk last year. This year, I wouldn't really say it was Terry McLaurin because he's not that type of player. He just he wants an extension. Like I said, he deserved it. They made it all the way to the conference championship last year. They came up short against the Eagles. Um, but yeah, it's just rough. Like I said, that ownership, they should pay him. He deserves to get paid. He probably wants to stay with the Commanders, and now he's requesting a trade, and we'll see if he gets dealt or if he's staying.
Yeah, it sucks to see Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry. That he's been one of my favorite players, since he's been in the league. You can even ask Drew here, um, and I think he deserves 100% to be paid, just as well as Trey Hendrickson deserves to get paid. A lot of those guys that do well, they don't complain or anything until it's time to get paid or time to get a contract renegotiated. That's where it's understandable. But when you still have 2 years left on your contract, or you want more money now, it's like that's not how it works. You still got to prove it, And this example for Brandon Ayuk last year just threw the Niners. It was just a bad deal with them, especially with Debo too and everything. But now Debo's with the Commanders, Maybe that's why the Commanders are holding off on paying Terry McLaurin. Because of that, they think, oh, Debo can replace that failing instead. And which I personally don't think that's right, because Terry McLaurin's been your guy throughout the terrible past few years that they've had, besides last year. He's played with multiple quarterbacks and he's been doing solid with that. And it just sucks to see, I mean, as a Raider fan, I would love to get Terry McLaurin. Will we? I don't think so. There are definitely going to be a handful of teams that will be willing to listen to hear what he has to say and how much money he wants. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone else will pick him up, pick up that contract, give him the contract that he wants,
Yeah, I mean,
with the content.
yeah, a lot of teams. I mean, like I said, he's a great wide receiver. Most teams have wide receiver ones, and some teams will probably would like to trade for him. I mean, he could be a solid wide receiver too. Obviously, 1-2 punches are good to have. When I think of a 1-2 punch, I think of the Vikings. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. I mean, those two guys, astonishing. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I mean, those two are also astonishing. The Niners used to have a 1-2 punch. They had Ayuk and Debo. Oh, speaking of Debo is on the Commanders. They do have Debo Samuel. Obviously, he's not. I wouldn't say he's more of a wide receiver. He's kind of more of a gadget guy. But I mean, I don't know. I still believe Terry McLaurin should be paid. He deserves to be paid. But it's just we gotta wait and see. Right now, he's requesting the trade. We'll see if they that makes them more eager to extend him, or if they're serious and saying, okay, hey, we'll trade you, right? And
Yeah, and
so
it's kind of crazy to see because a lot of there's a handful of these teams that have these 1-2 punch guys that they could be the wide receiver ones on other teams too, but they're the wide receiver two. Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, T Higgins, guys like those. I mean, that obviously the wide receiver ones on all those teams are wide receiver ones for a reason, but let alone their wide receiver two should not be shadowed because they could easily just as dominate you as the wide receiver one because you can't be busy on one while you can't be just double teaming one guy and let the other guy roam free.
yeah,
That's not how you know. And if another team goes to pick up Terry McLaurin, that'd just be a bad look on the Commanders. You have like you said rookie and Jaden Daniels. Yeah, you have Debo Samuel, but if you keep Terry McLaurin with you, it would be just as deadly. You maybe you'll have a way better season than last year. And let alone they had a great season last year. It's all like, you
and
know,
defensively, they've gotten better. They obviously they re-signed Bobby Wagner. They signed Von Miller maybe a week or two ago,
yeah, yeah,
and so like I said, they were just in the conference championship, the NFC, and It's just a waiting game that we'll have to see. But before we end off on this episode, we finally had the trade details for the Giants trade. Giants, like I said, they traded Camilo Doval, and in return they got Jesus Rodriguez, Parks Harbor, Tristan Vierling, and Carlos De La Rosa. So promising prospects, and same with the Royals trade. The Royals got Mike Yastrzemski, Giants get Junior Marte. Um, so Giants, make some late buzzer beater trades. Obviously, they didn't really improve their team. They kind of just got rid of some salary to free up. Like you said, still 2 months left in baseball. We will have to wait and see who reaches October. But that will be all for today. Thank you all for tuning in. I'd like to thank my brother, Sonny, for joining me today to fill in for my co-host. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what you want us to talk about next. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. Be on the lookout. I think I might have a new logo soon. I'm still working some things out about it. So we might have a new logo coming out, but until then, it's gonna be the same one for now. Thank you all one last time, and until next time, stay ready.